Maybe that's what it is. Because I'm not that angry that Man City won the league. It's like, yeah, Man City won the league. Great. They did well. They played good football. They probably weren't the best team throughout the year. Arsenal were probably better for bigger parts of the year, but they were better when it counts, and that's all that matters. They were better at the back end. They got the most points. That's all that matters, right? Whereas with Arsenal, there would be a lot more emotion behind Arsenal winning. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 2 Foot Tackle Podcast. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos, as I stopped recording just before because I realised I was really short. I was down to here, if you're looking on it on YouTube. So now I've just adjusted the chair, and we're all good. Thank you, hello, everyone. Welcome back again for another week, coming towards the real business end of the season as we have the Premier League has been as we have the finale of the Premier League, which has been decided over the weekend in quite underwhelming and anticlimactic circumstances, considering the potential in which that could have happened, if that makes any sense. So that's, of course, we're going to speak about that. Some other leagues have been decided. Some other leagues could be decided very, very soon. We'll touch on that maybe a little bit later. A big player, I was touching on Ivan Toney's ban, which we did touch on last week, because actually happened after. Touch on Ivan Toney's ban, touch on some other things as well that happened throughout the week that kind of tie into that. Some things that happened over the last couple of days, which is very, very poor. I think you might know what I'm speaking about, if that makes any sense. So yeah, there's that. And then what else are we going to speak about? A-League men's finals series has been finalised. The grand final list has been finalised. And then Champions League finals been finalised as well. A lot to speak about. Can't wait to get into it. It's going to be good. It's going to be great. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. We ticked over 400 a couple of weeks ago, so that's very, very good as we end the season. If we can get as many more before we wrap up for the year, or wrap up for the season, that would mean the world. As we come to the conclusion of the first proper season of this podcast, it would mean the world. So there's that. Make sure you subscribe, yes, notification bell, like it. Socials, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. TikTok, Instagram, 2 Foot Tackle Podcast, Twitter, 2FT Pod for all the 2 Foot Tackle Podcast needs, some clips, etc. If you miss out on any pods, all that good stuff. And then, Linktree, link in the bios about Twitter and Instagram, and audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Anchor, and Spotify. That's all the plugging I need to do. We can actually speak about the football now. Get in. So yes, all that good stuff out of the way. Let's crack into the football. Let's start things off with, obviously, the title of this podcast. Don't even know what it's actually going to be called. Well, no, so it's got something to do with Man City. And they're, fifth in 6 years league title. Obviously it was, I think it's that. I think it's their fifth in 6 years, or it's at least their fourth in fifth. Just a stupid accomplishment. Once again, they actually sealed it when Arsenal lost away to Nottingham Forest, which isn't the way that I thought Manchester City would win the league if they were going to. I thought it'd been a far more kind of dramatic, and it'd been a far more dramatic and actually kind of substantial and circumstantial, I should say. Substantial and circumstantial. Error game or kind of circumstance or whatever. But it was underwhelming. I didn't watch the Arsenal games. I didn't actually see the moment in which they got crowned. But it is one of those things, isn't it, where we had so much promise for the whole season and then it just fell flat on its face. City had done it again. And I think this podcast is just good to kind of wrap up Man City and just kind of speak about them for a bit, because there's a lot of different ways you can go to when speaking about City. Obviously, they're a club that has been heavily criticised, quite rightly as well in some respects. About their kind of business practices and the way that they have ruined football. You can call it that if you would like. I don't blame you if you do. But there's a lot of talking points, I think, around Man City. But it's hard to kind of just, without going over old ground, just speaking about the same stuff over and over again. Because it goes back to one of those things, right? As my camera isn't focusing properly, so I'm going to change settings. It goes back to that thing, right? Where it's, what do you value in your football club, and what do you value in football? Yeah, what do you value in your football club, and what do you value in football? Because City are a football club where they have a history. not a particularly rich one, or that one that has a lot of depth to it. They have a history, obviously, and it's it goes back to that thing. I think I just said it, like, about what you want from football, what you want from your football club. Because City have a history. City have a very good history, right? In terms of they've been a English League team that has been there or thereabouts for quite a while, right? And they've always been there, right? They've always been there, but they haven't been like a great team in their history. And then they obviously get that. They obviously had some success in like the 50s or whatever it was, and obviously this kind of period of dominance in which they've kind of fallen upon because of who's bought them out has kind of developed a different perception on Man City for a lot of different people. Firstly, it goes to like, okay, where do you go? What do you now look at them? What do you look at them as now? Are they a football powerhouse? Are they an English powerhouse? Are they just a team with money? And the perception of them has changed a lot, especially over the last couple of years, where it's been the same old thing. Because, like, obviously I was born in 04, right? So I really didn't start following football properly. Of course, being in Australia doesn't help that. I didn't really start following English football properly till I was about 10, right? 2014, there or thereabouts, right? So I don't remember the United period of dominance from like 07, or like 06 to like 2013 or 2012, whatever it was. I don't really remember that. I don't remember them just winning league after league after league, and even in the 90s and in the early 2000s, I don't remember them winning league after league after league, right? So this is my first proper experience of like of a team being just so dominant, right? And the honest feelings behind it is just complete and utter ambivalence here, if that's even a word. I just feel so ambivalent towards them. I don't really care. Is it because they don't have fans? Maybe. Is it because, like, they don't have fans? They don't have a very vocal supporter base? Maybe. Is it because they... Is it because they... Is it because they kind of don't really have a... I want to say culture, but like a proper identity. Like, we all know United's identity. We all know Chelsea's identity to a certain extent. Arsenal and Liverpool have an identity. City are kind of cultivating that now. Is it because of that? Is it because they've just spent so much money that it's basically financially doping anyway? So there's like, what's the point? Whereas, so it's like there's that type of thing. There's that kind of avenue of looking at it. Whereas when I speak to like people older than me who went through that kind of United dominance, people hate United. People still hate United. And they're reveling in their kind of downfall over the last couple of years because of the pain that they caused them. I don't feel that same way towards City, which is weird. Maybe it's just... I don't know if anyone feels the same. I really don't. But it's one of those things where it's like I don't really know what it is about City, because is it because they're a club that do you almost appreciate the success even more because of how good they've been? I don't know, maybe because they've broken so many records, because of the football they've played, because of all this good stuff, that you kind of just sit back and be like, yeah, they're so good, like, what can you do about it? And you don't really have that anger towards them. Because I feel like maybe it's just me appreciating football. Not even appreciating, because I don't like Man City either. I'm just really like neutral towards them. So maybe it's just me. Let me know in the comments if you think differently about like what your like perceptions of Man City are. Like what your perceptions of Man City are and what your feelings towards them are. Because it's, in saying that, I would have rather... I think it comes, like I said at the start, and like I've been alluding to, it comes with what you value from football. I value storylines. I value narratives. I value different things happening in my football, right? That's what I want. So Arsenal winning the league would have been different. It would have been a narrative. It would have been a story. It would have been something new to speak about. It would have been something that you remember for a while, something you go back and speak about, etc., right? So that's kind of why I wanted it to happen, in a sense. Not because I dislike Man City. It's just that Arsenal winning would be new and would be fresh. I think the reason why I've become so ambivalent towards Man City is because they're just winning all the time. But when you speak to United, when you speak to people like much older and they speak about how United just keep winning, they hate United because of all the pain that they put them through. So maybe it's because winning... Maybe it's my perception of football. My perception of football is just... Winning is good, yeah, it's great, and it's not the only thing that matters, but it's probably the most important thing, right? But I also am appreciative of the game, and that's probably not even the right way to look at it, right? Because if you're a football fan, you want your team to win, and you want kind of success. You want you want happiness from success. You don't want happiness for having a go or playing good football. So when you don't win, and when a team constantly is winning, and when a team is constantly taking that happiness away from you, I guess that's why people get angry at teams who are constantly winning all the time, because it's like you're hogging all the happiness in a sense. And we get jealous, obviously. But whereas with City, it's kind of, yeah, but we all know you're not really that. Like, I have a lot of respect for Man City. I have friends who are Man City supporters. But they don't have that factor that pisses people off. It's quite bizarre. And I don't know what that factor is. Is it because they've spent stupid amounts of money and that probably helps the fact that people don't hate them as much as they hate other teams, because it's like, well, they're financially dope, so what can we do about it? Is it because they play great football, so some people just sit back and appreciate the great football that they play? Is it because of, I don't know, because realistically, in the grand scheme of things, we should hate Manchester City a lot, right? We should hate them a lot. They're a team that has come from relative obscurity, have bought their way to the top, bought their way to the top, and have been kind of this well-drilled, well-oiled machine that has just demolished the competition for half a decade, or for a decade close on now, right? So we should hate them, because they have no substance, in a sense. As a helicopter flies over my house, it's probably going to pick that up on the mic, unfortunately. But they have no substance to them, right? With all due respect. And I think they're developing that substance, they're developing that culture over time naturally, right? But maybe that's what it is. Because I'm not that angry that Man City won the league. It's like, yeah, Man City won the league, great. They did well, they played good football. They probably weren't the best team throughout the year. Arsenal were probably better for bigger parts of the year, but they were better when it counts, and that's all that matters. They were better at the back end, they got the most points, that's all that matters, right? Whereas with Arsenal, there would be a lot more emotion behind Arsenal winning the league. Whether it would be happiness, sadness, disappointment, anger, frustration, kind of curiosity, excitement, like whatever it is. From every football fan, there'd be far more emotion out of Arsenal winning the league. And after any team win the league, Liverpool win the league, even United win the league, Chelsea win the league. So it's interesting. I mean, looking at it from a Chelsea perspective, I don't know how people react when Chelsea win the league. Do Chelsea have do people hate Chelsea to a similar extent to they hate the other big clubs in the league? I don't know. But maybe it's just because football's boring now, because it's the same thing every single year. It's whoever spends the most money wins the league more often than not. Big players go to these 7 teams, and it's just the same thing over and over again. Whereas little bits of uniqueness, like Arsenal winning the league, is good. I think that's why would this even be a talking point if Arsenal won the league? If Arsenal weren't even in the conversation, if City had just ran away with it like they did when they got the Centurions, would this even be a conversation? Would it just be like, yeah, City won the league, great, and then just move on? But would you, let me know in the comments, would you have rather Arsenal won the league, if you're watching on YouTube, of course? If you're listening to Spotify, make sure you go over to YouTube, subscribe, and then leave a comment. Would you have rather Arsenal win the league or City win the league? From a neutral perspective. If you're obviously a fan of either of those two clubs, then your answer's pretty cut and dry. But like a Chelsea supporter, I know I'm meant to hate Arsenal, but I would rather have them won the league. If I was a United supporter, I don't know, Tottenham, probably not Tottenham. But, it's one of those things. In saying that, though, I do have a slight bit of anger towards City or frustration, because it's like, is the playing field fair? And this obviously comes into what they're transitioning into, that obviously financial fair play kind of breach, and that those charges, 116 charges or whatever it's been, that they've been charged with. Does that affect their legacy? And what if their titles get stripped? What if that the Gerrard slip late season, what if that gets stripped from them? What if the Aguero moment gets stripped from them, right? And obviously those moments are never going to be able to revoke. they still would have been there when Aguero won the league. You can't just click your fingers and make that moment disappear, right? But I think it puts into doubt a lot of what this regime has done, and it will put into doubt the integrity of the whole league, to be honest. But I think this league, this kind of title win will just be another one that's just be like, yep, ticking over again. They're always going to be there and about. They're always going to be good enough to make a splash. And I mean, we spoke about it last year, how last year was like the most exciting kind of end to the title race that you could get because both teams didn't give up. Both teams were just relentless in their pursuits of just doing what they needed to do. Whereas this year it's been like, yeah, Arsenal have just been a pace off it in the back end of the season, and that's kind of been the underwhelming part because City have just strolled away with it as they always do. And not strolled away with it, but City just end up winning like they always win. So maybe that's where the frustration lies. It's just that, yeah, you won again, it's boring. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just the fact that it's boring all the time is frustrating a lot of people. Because you can't really hate Man City. Like, I think you can't hate Man City because of their regime. Because if you hate Man City because of their regime, newsflash, you're going to hate a lot of things about football, right? A lot of far worse things than a Dubai prince owning a football club. There's a lot worse things going on, right? So you can't hate it from that perspective. You would have to hate it from the fact that they just hog all the leagues, which is obviously what it is. It's quite frustrating. It's quite annoying from a neutral's perspective because I thought Arsenal were well within a chance. If I can speak, were well within a chance of winning the league, and they probably should have won the league. And I think a lot of Arsenal fans resigned themselves to defeat after that Southampton game, which kind of ended everything for them. But as a really loud car drives past my house, yeah, I just think it's one of those things, right? Where it's like, congrats Man City, good on them. Where to from here? Where do you kind of go from here? And yeah, where to from here? Where do you go from here? What's next? And how do you improve now? And what's the perception of them going to be now? Because if they win the treble, which is obviously the next talking point on my run sheet, not obviously because you wouldn't know that, it's the next talking point on my run sheet. If they win the treble, they jump Chelsea in total trophies won over their history. And I think that would put them on 24, I think that is. So, can they win obviously, should we do the Champions League? Oh, well, the Champions League final has been announced. I think this is a good way to just kind of summarise it. Champions League final, obviously, City versus Inter. And we'll speak about it a little bit later, actually. No, we'll speak about it now, considering we're talking about it. When you're looking at it from a City perspective, if City win the treble, does that establish themselves as, like, yeah, they're one of the best teams to ever play the game? Like, ever? Like, comparing them to, like, Barca, the Barca team under Pep, to the Galacticos and the, like, teams of that ilk. Would they be one of the best football teams ever if they win the treble this season? Because they've managed to transform their way of playing, and it would be the pinnacle, like in comparison to the last season, and it would be the pinnacle of their kind of tenure in a sense. Like it would be the peak, and you can't beat that peak. A treble, FA Cup, League, and Champions League with this team is the peak, right? So what then in that case, what's the perception around City if they do win the treble? How does that change? Do they become more hated because it's like, oh, so now you're financially doping all of the trophies, right? Okay, then there's an issue. Do they become more appreciated because it's like, gee, how good are this City team? Do people become even more ambivalent towards them? Like, will I just become, yeah, Man City won again, great. Man City beat my team, cool. Like, is it because of that financially doping kind of background that they have? Is it because of those kind of people that they have? There's another car goes past my house. Is it because of that kind of like us kind of, I don't know how to describe it. Is it because of that kind of ruling the world type mentality that they have, almost like a god complex where they feel owed everything and they feel it's their divine right because of how much money they have and the players that they've got, that it becomes, oh, just who cares? Or does that provoke more anger? It's really interesting. And I think it goes back to kind of what happens if they don't win it. Well, I don't think it goes back to what happens if they don't win it, but what if they don't win it? What if Pep fails again? Obviously, he failed in the Champions League final against Chelsea. Massively overthought that game, right? Massively overthought that game. And I know this Pep overthinking thing is a big issue, and we're going to preview the Champions League final probably the week before it happens, so 2 podcast time, I think. But you got to look at it as like, all right, what does Pep do here? Pep has to play the same way, because if they play the same way, they win the game quite comfortably. In saying that, I know I'm saying that whilst wearing an Inter Milan kit, but still, right? So you got to look at it from the perception of them now is whatever it is, and then it's like, all right, what if they lose the Champions League final? Do people care less about them if they lose a Champions League final again, because it's like, oh, they can't do it when it matters, so who cares? Maybe that's what it'll be, but you have to be able to beat. Like Man City will win that game. They should win that game quite comfortably. Obviously, against Chelsea, they obviously didn't play Fernandinho or Rodri, which kind of cost them the game. They went too attacking, and they defensively they were exposed, especially in that counter attack, right? So, and obviously Pep has overthought games, like in the game against Tottenham. When Tottenham made the Champions League final, they played like 4-1-4-1, and they tried to flood the midfield, and they got hurt out wide because of that, etc. Right? So I think this Champions League final for City is a big, like, there's a lot weighing on it for them. There's a lot weighing on it for them when it comes to what happens if they lose and if they win when it comes to their perception. Like, this has been like the main kind of crux of this podcast is the perception around Man City. If they win, do people just not care because it's like, oh, you're financially doped? If they win, do people get angry at them because it's like, all right, stop winning? Is it the Man United effect? If they lose, it's how funny is this? They financially dope and still come into the Champions League. Is it? I don't really think there's another scenario to happen if they don't win it, and for the perception not to be what I just said. But I guess it's interesting. There's no real answer to this question. It's more just a roundabout kind of topic and like a summation of what's happened. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below about what Man City have kind of, what your perception is on City. Has it changed after this league win? Do you appreciate them? Do you hate them? Are you ambivalent towards them? Do you not care? Like, it's interesting because I'm firmly in the, oh yeah, they won, good on them. Like, I don't really care that much about them camp. So yeah, there you go. I don't really know where to like end this conversation. Is there a conclusion? I don't know. Because when the conclusion, like, there's no conclusion to these type of conversations because they're ever evolving, right? If you ask people in the 70s what they thought of United, it would be different to if you ask people in the 90s what they thought of United, and it would be different it would be different if you ask people who grew up in the 2000s about what they thought of United, 2010s and 2020s, right? So the current perception of Man City is one thing. Will that change? Do you see the current perception of Man City changing? Is the damage kind of irreversible of what they've done in terms of the financially doping side of things? Is that damage irreversible and forever for here on in? It's just going to be, oh yeah, Man City, that club, that financially dopes, so who really cares? Maybe it's going to be that. Or maybe it goes back to the thing of, maybe it goes full circle and it's, oh, Man City are financially doping, but every single club in the country is financially doping. Chelsea have been financially doping for ages. Like, Liverpool are probably going to get to a point where they're doing that. United are probably going to get to that point. Arsenal, etc., and then it goes into a loop of, oh, all right, every team is financially doping. Are we ambivalent towards every team? Or does it go full circle and are we hating on every team again because we're on a level playing field again? It's going to be a very interesting, ever-evolving situation. But I think the main crux of it is people are ambivalent towards City because they feel that people are, for the most part, very neutral and ambivalent towards Man City because they feel like City are so far ahead in terms of the playing field that they're on that it's not fair. Like, the money that they have available to them, the resources that they have available to them, just puts them so far ahead of everyone else that it's like, what's the point? We can't even compete, right? And I know there's obviously flaws to that statement, obviously, and there's obviously exceptions, and there's obviously ways you can counteract that. But what you got with that, right, is like, how do I describe? Like, that's, but then it's like, I don't know. But then you can look at it and say, Sorry, if I can get my words out. Then you can look at it and say, what, like, people are angry because of the fact that they're not on a level playing field to Man City. So it's like, why are you so far ahead of us just because you're rich? Like, that's not fair, and that's why people hate them. It's quite interesting. What are your perceptions on Man City? Let me know in the comments below, because it's going to be fascinating to see, in my opinion. And do you think they'll change as well, is the main thing. But let's move on to another talking point which I want to speak about, and that is, of course, Ivan Toney's ban. Ivan Toney had a 12-month ban. No, that's not it. 8-month ban. Is it? Yeah, 8-month ban for betting, and as someone who bets, gamble responsibly. I don't bet. My friend bets. I used to bet. I don't bet anymore. I'm changed. A friend of mine bets. Gamble responsibly. Yeah. So Ivan Toney, 8-month ban, has to pay a fine, etc. I don't really want to speak about the ban. Actually, I do, but I want to speak about more gambling in football, right? Because as a person who is over the age of 18, so in a country in which gambling is legal and sports bet is a thing that is readily accessible and is kind of ingrained into the culture of Australia, right? It's always, there's a game on, put a multi on, chuck a cheeky multi on, chuck $5 here, first goal scorer, or to get booked or whatever, right? Like there is always betting is so ingrained in sporting culture, right? And I think 43% of betting shirts, or of betting shirts, 43% of shirt sponsors are betting sponsors, right? So when there's 99% of advertising hoardings are betting sponsorships, when there's so much betting and so much gambling surrounded by the game, you need to at least acknowledge people are going to bet. Players are going to bet. Like, it happens all around sport, and obviously Ivan Toney is the main case. He had over 100 charges, right, of betting. He got an 8-month ban, some fines as well, which I don't think will hurt him that much. But you can look at the fine and say, okay, that's what it is. But surely that's not fair, because if you take a young, I know Ivan Toney's not young, but if you take a young, impressionable people who have so many different people in their ear, good advice, bad advice, with betting sponsorships on their shirt, on their socks, on their shorts, on the advertising boardings, when they flick on the football to watch Man City versus Chelsea, it's the odds are in the bottom right hand corner, or brought to you by Sky Bet or Sportsbet or whatever, right? When there is so much betting and so much gambling involved into the game and entrenched into the game, how can you punish a footballer 8 months worth for betting? You have to at least, maybe not how can you, but you at least need to reform and change the way that you are going about things to prevent this from happening in the future. Because the way you prevent players from betting is not by banning Ivan Toney for 8 months. It's by stop putting betting everywhere. That's how you stop people from betting. Like, it's not rocket science, as I nearly kind of poked the lens out of the camera, trying to focus my camera again. It's not rocket science. Like, it really isn't rocket science. You need to be able to understand the main root cause of an issue. And that issue is the vast amounts of betting sponsorships and betting advertising that's surrounding football. That's why he's betting. Not because he has so much money, not because he's an idiot. It's because of that. It is because of that. It subconsciously affects you. And when you ban Ivan Toney for 8 months for betting, and yet you ban someone like a Luis Suarez 8 games for racism, or whatever it was, it says a lot about the priorities of big kind of the Premier League and of the FA and of big kind of sporting organisations. It says a lot. It says a lot about their kind of priorities. It does. When you need to be able to, you need to have the punishment fit to the crime. The punishment needs to fit the crime. Racism is a far bigger crime than just racism is a far bigger crime than just betting on a game. Betting on a game. Is it match fixing? No, it's not. He didn't get convicted of match fixing. It was purely betting on games, right? Betting on himself or whatever it was to score, right? I don't know. So is that bad? Yeah, it is. You shouldn't bet on yourself. You shouldn't bet. If you're a professional athlete, you shouldn't bet, right? Pretty cut and dry. But if you're a person, you shouldn't be racist, right? So how are we punishing gambling bigger than we're punishing racism? When gambling is far more A, normalized, B, legal, C, not punishable in any other realm of anything. Like, I don't get locked up for putting a 3-leg multi on Chelsea versus Man City. Or I don't get cancelled or things like that, right? I don't get looked down upon for putting $5 on a game of football, right? So how is that deserving of a bigger punishment than X player being racist towards another player and getting 8-week ban, or a fan being racist and getting a year stadium ban, or and getting $1,000 fine or whatever it is? Like, the punishments are so far different, and it speaks volumes about the priorities and also like the way football's going. People want to say stop racism, right? People want to say stop racism. And obviously this has come about again because, of course, what's happened with Vini Jr. Vinicius Jr. has been racially abused countless times in the last couple of weeks by Spanish league fans, and he came out and said he doesn't want to play anymore, right? Because of the racial abuse that he was getting over the weekend. You cannot say Black Lives Matter or say no to racism without taking proper action. Like, proper action. There is a difference. There is a difference between doing these campaigns, in which I agree with, because I think the sentiment is good and I think the idea behind it is good. You need to raise awareness for people to stop being racist, because unfortunately we live in a world in which people are racist and people need to be taught to not be racist somehow, right? But when people are racist, that is an action, and that is a behavior that directly affects a lot of people and can harm a lot of people. You need to punish that. You need to properly punish that. 8 weeks on a player is not a deterrent, because the difference between betting, this is what it is. The difference between betting and the kind of the harsh punishment in comparison to the reason why people do it is because the reason why people do it is because it's entrenched into the game. They're being taught and they are being subconsciously manipulated to bet because of how much they're surrounded by betting. People aren't surrounded by racism, right? I would like to think not anyway, especially in the changing rooms in these modern times. If an offense comment is made, I expect it to be picked up, especially if you're in a public place, right? Especially. So you're not surrounded by racism as much as you're surrounded by betting. Couple that with the fact that racism is obviously the far bigger crime, if we're going to say that there's a crimes. Racism is obviously a far bigger crime, obviously affects people to a bigger extent. How is that not given a harsh punishment? That's the issue. That's the issue in which a lot of people have. Because you can say, yeah, but this reason and this reason, and you're never going to stop racism. I agree. Racism is always going to be a thing, unfortunately, but it's a shit reality in which we live. It's always going to be a thing in one realm or another, right? But what you need to do is you need to be able to kind of identify it and stamp it out as much as possible. Or when it does occur, you need to be able to say here's a punishment, bang. Like if it's a fan, lifetime ban from the stadium, X amount of dollars fine. That's unsocial conduct or whatever it is, under whatever jurisdiction you want, and then bang, there you go. For a player, it's X 2-year ban for being racist, a year ban for being racist, and you're not paid throughout that year, or whatever it is, right? You can't just be like, oh, if you're racist, yeah, just get 8 weeks. 8 weeks for being racist, you'll be right. You bet, you put a multi on Man City versus Arsenal, you put Gabriel Martinelli to have one or more shots on target. Oh, mate, 8 months. 8 months, not allowed to do that. Not allowed to do that. So you call someone, you say a racial slur to someone? Oh, mate, 8 weeks, you'll be right. Like, what are you talking? Like, that is so unbelievably backwards. Unbelievably backwards. Because I'm big on like I'm big on like I think we're in a position of like we're overcorrecting in a way. We're overcorrecting kind of society and society's values in a sense because there is like we're overcorrecting society's values in a sense. In the past, it was we did one thing, and then as we've coming into this new generation, we've done another thing, and we've gone, in my opinion, to some extent, to the other extreme. But I think that comes with the territory of trying to balance society and balance the morals of society. We all know what was floating around in the 70s and back in the 60s and whatever about the racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. And we're coming into this new period where I think, to some extent, in some cases, it's gone to the extreme where we've gone the complete other way. But I think we're going to meet a good middle ground in which we have achieved at times, and I think that's what it's going to be. It's a microcosm in football. It is a microcosm in football. Racism once, but it's kind of worked the adverse effect. Racism once was just a normal part of the game, right? Paul Canaville, former Chelsea player, was being racially abused by his own fans. First black player to play for Chelsea, I'm pretty sure. Was being racially abused by his own fans, right? When he was warming up, and when I think he might have scored. He documented this all in his book, which is a fascinating read as well. He was being racially abused by his own fans when he was warming up. He comes on, plays a couple of games. I think he might score a winner or do something or whatever, do something good, and then he comes into the change rooms and so he does something good, and then all the fans start singing his name, Paul Canaville, etc. And then he goes back into the changing rooms and a player comes up to him and is like, "Oh, you're one of us now," which is like, why wasn't he one of them? Why wasn't he one of us all the time? Just because he was black, essentially, right? So that is how entrenched racism was in football, especially in England, back in those days. From not only a fan's perspective, but also a player's perspective. It was so institutionalized that a player went up to him and said that and didn't really think anything was wrong, right? When obviously it was a stupid thing to say, and it's obviously a lot wrong because he was always one of you, right? Now we're getting into this period where you'd expect, if anything, you'd expect it to be the other way, where the crackdown on racism is hard. Like, it is black and white. It is kind of, well, probably very kind of interesting choice of words there, but it's cut and dry. This is it. You cannot do this. If you do this, it's this punishment. There you go. Bang, 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 bang. People are getting suspended. People are getting lifetime bans from stadiums, whatever, right? That's what you'd expect to happen. And then slowly we'd meet into a middle ground where you give leeway because of, obviously there's no leeway in racism, but especially when it comes to people chanting stuff or people saying things, unless it's on record, you can't really prove it, right? I understand it's getting a very slippery slope, but you eventually come to a good middle ground where it's like, okay, we're in a very comfortable scenario. Racism is very, very limited and is very, very not that common, but when it does happen, it is bang, crack down hard, right? We aren't even getting to that point anymore. We are still stuck 30 years behind. And when you compare it to the response to gambling, it's a joke. It's actually a disgrace. Like, it is actually a disgrace. And it once again you puts into question the morals of the FA, of people in charge. Which is like, what's the point? What is the point? Obviously, Vini Jr. It's obviously, I'm referencing from an English perspective because that's what I know. But it's obviously rife in other countries. Spain, obviously a big one. Italy as well, a big one. I mean, how many people of colour in the Italian national team? Not that many, right? So, I mean, I think, like, it's rife within football. But giving a player an 8-month ban for gambling when fans can be racist and chant and do monkey chants to black players and get off. Come on now. Like, it's a joke. It's a joke. But I think that's all. To kind of speak on. Let's should we move on to A-League chat, or should we do? Yeah, let's do a quick wrap up of what I'm gonna have a quick break. I'm gonna have a drink because my throat's a bit sore. But let's do a quick wrap up of what happened in the leagues, and then we're gonna move on to A-League chat, and then we're gonna wrap things up. So yeah, there you go. Okay, we're back on slightly brighter news now. Let's look at some things that happened across the weekends of football before we move on to a slightly short episode this week, because I'm assuming it'll be quite a bumper episode next week. Just a hunch though. Yeah. So Brentford beat Spurs. That was very funny. Spurs are so funny. Spurs are hilarious. They're actually so great. They're not. If they don't get Europe, that's going to be great. It's going to be so funny if Brentford finish above them. The obviously Liverpool kind of scrape top four. Also, yeah. Speaking of which, go onto the 2 Foot Tackle TikTok page, and do a big scroll to a TikTok where I said Newcastle are a genuine top four contender, and just look at the comments on that because it's quite funny considering that there's they've got 2 games left and all they need is 1 win from 2 games, and those 2 games include Chelsea. They include Chelsea, so that's a guaranteed 3 points. So yeah, that's quite funny. Liverpool salvage Roberto Firmino at the death. Is Roberto Firmino the best Brazilian to ever play in the Premier League? I can't think of any others that are better unless there's one completely skipping my mind. If Casemiro came maybe 4 years sooner, he'd be up there. David Luiz, probably not. He's Gabriel Jesus, maybe. Gabriel Martinelli, maybe in 10 years he'll be up there. But yeah, Firmino is a baller. He's been a fantastic servant for Liverpool, and it was fitting that he got his goal in his last game at Anfield. Shame he couldn't get the winner, or Liverpool couldn't get the winner themselves. But is he the best Brazilian to ever be to play in the Premier League? I think he is. Unless someone's completely skipped my mind, I think he is. So he's been a fantastic servant for them. Obviously, the referees kind of did screw them over in some respects in that game. That was quite absurd. Brighton beat Southampton 3-1. They're very good. Evan Ferguson is a baller. He's going to be a fantastic talent. West Ham 3-1. Leeds are probably down. Obviously, Forest beat Arsenal and Everton drew to Wolves. Who goes down? They all have 1 game to go. Leicester, of course, have another game, which they play tomorrow against Newcastle. Look, I've got friends who support Everton and Leicester, so I really don't want either of them to go down. But one of them will go down. Because I think Forest are safe. Yeah, Forest are safe somehow. It's going to be weird seeing one of Leicester or Everton not in the Premier League. It's going to be strange. It's going to be real strange. I'm gonna say Leicester go down. I'm really sorry. Because I've got a good friend who supports Leicester, and I'm really sorry, but I think Leicester will go down. I just don't think they've got the. I don't think they've got the minerals. They've just been so far off it, and seeing Harry Souttar go down is going to be heartbreaking. But it's the way the cookie crumbles. Unfortunately, it's heartbreaking. It very much is. Ligue 1, as in the French Ligue 1, that's been decided. PSG win the league again. Great, good stuff. That's lovely. Bundesliga is interesting. Dortmund could actually win the league. They've got 1 game left. They just need to win. Dortmund need to win to Mainz, and they win the league. If Dortmund do not win the league, I swear to God, I'm going to throw something. Is it on TV? Please tell me it's on TV here. Surely it's on TV. Or the schedules aren't out yet. But if Dortmund have to win the league, surely they just need to beat Mainz after Bayern Munich lost 3-1 to Leipzig, which is quite funny. It's also funny to say Tuchel will not win the league with Bayern Munich. That's ironic, isn't it? Champions League final has been decided, as well as Europa League final, Sevilla versus Roma. That's going to be interesting as well. Obviously, there's 3 Italian teams. West Ham as well. That West Ham fan that started bashing the AC Alkmaar fans. Quite funny that they actually rate that highly. And I rate that highly. Not funny, kind of heroic. Trying to get into the friends and family section. He just stands at the top of the stairs, just swinging, barking haymakers. It's great. Yeah, I rate it. Europa League final, that's going to be good. And then obviously the Conference League final as well is going to be interesting. It's Fiorentina versus West Ham. So there you go. Anything else that happens? Obviously City beat Chelsea, but that's no surprise. City beat Chelsea after playing their second team. So City beat Chelsea after playing their second team. So that's obviously quite frustrating for a Chelsea supporter. But I'm not surprised in the slightest. So there you go. Let's move on as I wrap things up. Let's move on to the A-League preview of the grand final. Or no, we're not doing that. Review of the semis. City versus Central Coast. The grand final, which I thought would happen, but I would like to see Adelaide get in. what are we doing in terms of boycotts? I'll speak about that properly when I do the preview of the grand final, actually, because I got thoughts. Anyways, also follow Ari Stamatakos on TikTok. Go on to TikTok and follow my TikTok. I did some thoughts on the boycotting of the semi-finals, which is interesting. So there you go. So City obviously beat Sydney 4-0 quite comfortably. That is how I thought the game was going to go. Obviously, it doesn't help that Max Burgess decides to just kick. Who was it? Was it Tilio? I think it might have been Tilio. But it didn't help that Max Burgess just decided to completely just chop the living fuck out of whoever it was. Yeah, Tilio. Horrendous tackle, shocking challenge. The fact that I wasn't given a red card on first look is a joke. But on review, red card, clear as day. Thank you very much. Really just a stupid thing to do, and that pretty much the game was done from there. City capitalised. I think they went into the half 1-0 up, if I'm not mistaken. Was it 1-0? Yeah, it was 1-0 up. Curtis Good with a good header. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. And then, Rodwell with an own goal, and then Tilio and Van der Ven sealed things. Not surprised in the slightest. City were by far the better team, by far the best team all year, and I'd be shocked if they don't win it. Sydney, valiant as always, but yeah, when you go down to 10 men, and when it's Max Burgess as well, who's a pretty good attacking outlet for them, they really didn't have anything on the counter attack after that, which is obviously something that they were meant to be, which is obviously the avenue in which they were going to go down. Robert Mack didn't actually play, which is obviously pretty big for them, because he obviously with a hamstring injury in the game in the first leg, I should say. The first leg. In the first leg against City, he obviously didn't feature. Adrian Segic. I'm going to assume it's Segic. He came on, showed some sparks. Still only 18 years old, right? Hasn't really played a whole bunch of minutes this season, so especially in the latter portion. So, you can't really put a whole lot of things on him. But when Max Burgess being one of their main kind of counter-attacking outlets, him going out of the game within half an hour pretty much sealed the fate for them. City way too good. Geordie Boss getting his kind of home, the fact that he had to do a home send-off in the semi-final when they finished first in the league is an indictment on the league itself, but he had to do a send-off to his home fans. He's going to be a baller going to Belgium, so hopefully wish him all the best. He's going to be a baller. We've been crying out for a left-back to replace his age for so long. He should get so many minutes. He should get all the minutes in the Asian Cup. Every single one of the minutes in the Asian Cup. He's a baller. He's so good. I hope he kills it in Belgium. And he is the kind of template for the A-League isn't good quality. There's no pathways to the A-League. Through the A-League, just look at Geordie Boss. He's a baller. He's so good. And he proved it again on the weekend. He was fantastic. And City ran away 4-0 victors. What more can you say? If we move on to the next game, Central Coast did it. I made the comment that I didn't think Central Coast will be able to beat Adelaide 4 times. Will be able to beat Adelaide 4 times in a season. I just don't think that a team that good as Adelaide will lose 4 times in a season to a team that's kind of their equal. But it was a Sammy Silvera, Marco Tilio goal. 2 goals within 5 minutes, and then bang, bang, see you bye, 2-0, 4-1 on aggregate, and Adelaide couldn't really revive that. The Central Coast are a really good feel-good story for the league this season, barring, of course, what's happened with the grand final and what your thoughts on them are because of that. But, there's so much excitement about that team. Silvera playing very good football. Cummings, of course. Tilio has kind of come alive in this kind of back end of the season, it seems. Back end of the season, in his final 2 games, scored three goals and got an assist in his final 2 games of the actual season. Got a goal and an assist in games before that. He really hit this purple patch in the back end of the season, and if he can carry that through to the grand final, he could be the saviour for them. Not saviour, but a real kind of person who can do a lot for them in that game. I love Nisbet in midfield. I think he's just a dog. He's just a kind of a prick, but also very just good, like good enough on the ball. He's a prick. He just does a lot right, and I think if I'm mistaken, was he at Sydney? Or am I imagining that? No, I'm imagining that. I'm thinking of a different player. I'm thinking Callum Nieuwenhof. That's what I'm thinking of. I'm pretty sure Callum Nieuwenhof was at Sydney anyway. But yeah, I really rate Nisbet. But yeah, Triantis as well, or Triantis, as I should pronounce it. He was very good as well on the weekend. Against Adelaide, just far too good. And Carl Vert didn't address the issues they needed to address. 4 times in a season, Adelaide fell to Central Coast. I think on aggregate across those 4 games, it was, what was it? It was 4-1 across the 2 semis. It was 4-1 across the 2 semis, and then a 4-1 and a 4-0. That is 12-3 across 4. Yeah, that is 12-3 across. That's 4-3. No, 12-3 across 4 games, which for the teams competing in the semi-final is a massive kind of shock. So there you go. It's a very kind of. It's going to be a very interesting grand final. I don't see it being a whitewash. I don't see City dominating the game. I think Central Coast will have a lot, especially on the counter attack. We'll do a more in depth preview when we come to it. But yeah, good season for Adelaide. They have a lot of bright sparks. Goodwin did all he could in that semi final. Did all he could throughout the season as well. Hopefully he stays. Nestori Rukunda. A lot of clubs after him. A lot of big clubs after him. Just pick the right one, Ness, please. Don't ruin your career so early. You've got such a bright future. So hopefully he picks the right one. I back him and his support staff to kind of pick the right avenue for him. I don't think that should be an issue. So yeah, hopefully only ways up for Central Coast and for Melbourne City. I'll do a more comprehensive preview of it when we get to it. But yeah, there you go. That is all. Just over 50 minutes for this episode, so there you go. Let's finish things up with the preview of the week. So City versus Brighton. Brighton should win that. If Brighton win that, they're in contention for European competitions. Actually, no, they already qualified for Europa. Oh, yeah, they already qualified for Europa League. There you go. They can still technically get into the 5th if they wanted, but yeah. United versus Chelsea. There's fat chance I'm getting up for that one. Actually, it's at 5 a.m. and I'm flying out of Melbourne to go to Sydney at 10:30, so I might stay up for that. I don't know. I'll see. That'll be interesting. But of course, Bundesliga finishes up this weekend, which is good. Hopefully, Dortmund get the job done. And then, of course, the final day celebrations will be coming back on Monday to review all of the final day activities, and then the podcast after that will be my kind of wrap up of the season. If we're going to give quick predictions, top 4 will be City, Arsenal, Newcastle, Liverpool. I just want to see the meltdown if United don't make it. It's going to be glorious. 5th will be United, 6th will be Brighton, and 7th will be Villa. Bottom, Chelsea will finish 11th. Southampton will finish bottom. Leeds will finish second bottom. Leeds will finish second bottom. And Leicester will finish 18th. Everton survive by the skin of their teeth. Just. Emphasis on the word just, because that's going to be a fucking fascinating like final day. Can't wait to watch that. But there you go. Thank you all very much for watching another episode of Two for Attacker Podcast. I apologise for some of the delays, or not the delays, but the pauses throughout, if you notice that. The camera's playing up, the focus isn't right. A lot has gone wrong. I'm a bit tired. But we power through. It is what it is. Another episode in the books as we wrap up Season 2 of this. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you do follow all the socials that are all linked in the description. I can just direct you to the description on YouTube. All the socials are linked below. Make sure to subscribe. Like the podcast. Thank you very much for sticking around. Thank you very much for subscribing if you've come from last week or the week before's episode. Thank you very much for sticking around if you haven't. It does mean the world. Subscribe. Follow all the socials. Stay tuned to next week as we review the final day happenings of both Premier League, Bundesliga, etc., etc. So, thank you very much for watching. See you guys next week as season 22-23 is coming to a close. Goodbye, everyone.